This is new for me. So I recently discovered that I really enjoy folk art. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I know it's supposed to be a cultural thing. I don't really care. Listen, the number one thing for me when I look at art is it interesting to look at? Does it appeal to me to look at it visually? Then tell me your story. If there's some kind of story in there, you can tell me. But most of the time, you're ruining the story I have in my head. I have a story when I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. I want to see that. I want to look at that. Maybe I want to create something like that. And then you tell me your story and you ruin it. We're not going to get into that. What we're going to get into today is I'm going to do two paintings. I'm going to do a more traditional folk art. And I'm going to walk you through my process. And then I'm going to do another one, but I'm going to make it a little different. I'm going to make it a little bit more like me, like what I like to create with it. Okay, we'll get into it. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do two of these, but one of them is going to be very small down here, and then I'm going to add another element up here to show you a little bit of what this is about. Now, folk art can be extremely complex, or it can be very simple. I'm going to do a simple version of folk art. You can look up a ton of different ones. Maybe I'll flip a couple here up on the screen of just very complex or more complex. There's a lot of elements involved. Then that kind of folk art is different than what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do it much more simple. That part doesn't matter though. You can make it as simple as you want or as complex as you want. That's up to you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do a little element up here for the tree work. The trees are very interesting. You can do a lot of different things with them, but let me show you just an idea of maybe what a tree would look like. Many times the colors are muted, but really the palette is dependent upon the artist, so it doesn't really matter. But when you think of the shape of a tree, in folk art it's very exaggerated. That's the shape. Whatever the shape is of the tree, that's the shape that you draw. You don't put a lot of detail into that part. I'm going to let that dry for a second and go down to the next part. So when you look at folk art, a lot of times you're looking at, let me just do a small square here. Nothing really matters here. So I can do, my sky can be any color that I want it to be. And I might do something like this. Sometimes you want to plan this out and you want to draw it in. And when I do the second one, I'll draw it in and show you how to do that. But I may have this come down a little bit over here. That's going to be my sky, even though it's a violet color. This is probably not the best paint to use because it's going to run and I'm not letting this dry in between. But basically your next one you're going to do kind of like this and let it come down. You're going to follow a specific line with that. And you want that bottom to have a defined line as well. So when you're doing this, you want that to be a certain way. So let's say you have a hill over here like this, and then you come down over here. You may want this to come down a little bit more. You might have another hill on this next section here. I'm going to skip that section and do the other section down here. So in the very foreground part, so you might want to have something like this, a straight line towards the bottom, and then this middle section may be another one here. But you see how I'm developing these into layers? That's really what folk art is. It's developed into layers. Sometimes at the bottom you have things that are separated. There'll be a block here. You may use the same color and do another block here. Might have another block here. Like I said, this is definitely not going to be the paint you would use. You wouldn't use core paint because they tend to run into each other. And the idea behind this is very clean lines, very separated colors, which I have not been able to accomplish right here. But you get the idea, you get the gist of it. I'm going to let that dry for a second, and I'm going to come over here back to this. Now, this is something you would see in folk art. It's very simplistic but decorative at the same time. So you may see the branches come out like this as it goes up. Or you may see something where the branches do this as it goes up. but very simple patterns. Everything's patterns with folk art. Okay, just for reference, while we're waiting for that one, this is an idea of something that would be considered folk art. Now, you can, like I said, you can do this, or you can do things that are more in depth, more in detail. And one of the things you can do is add a little bit of white pen or something to it, black pen to it. But sometimes you want to have little patterns in here. So you might go over here and go like this. Just have a line that comes down, another line that comes down, another line that comes down. Put little dots in the middle of it. And you may decorate the entire thing like that. That's not very bright right now, but you know what I'm saying. So you can do things like that. Sometimes you have another line here. You might want it to be a little thicker. I think the pen's out of, or it's just not working properly. You might do a thicker line there or something like that. However you're going to do it. But basically you can put patterns also in each section. They wouldn't run into the next section though, usually. They just stick to where they are, the section that they're in. And one of the things I did here, so I didn't put a lot of detail into anything here, but I wanted to show this to you because I wanted to show you in folk art, this is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But when you use cotton paper instead of pulp paper, you're able to get smoother washes. So you can see some lines here. And usually in folk art, you can definitely see lines here. Usually in folk art, you don't want to see that. You want to have a solid color and then have another color in it. But they're usually solid color. You can do a little variation in the color itself. Maybe have it darker towards the bottom or towards the top where the next line starts or whatever. But you really want to have a smooth wash if you can. So being that's what you want, the watercolor paper, the cotton watercolor paper is better than the pulp watercolor paper because it tends to streak a little bit more on the paper. I don't care. I enjoyed doing both of these. They were both fun. And you can see that what I did to this one was change it a little bit. I added a little bit of neurographic art into it. So I added these black lines that kind of smooth into each other that I didn't add to this one because that's not usually what you do. You don't usually add line work to it, but I like line work, so I'm going to add line work to my folk art. Okay, so I'm going to get started on another one that I actually just do. I'm going to do a full one here. Hopefully I can get something that looks decent. If not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to enjoy myself anyway. And while I do this, I'm going to do a little Q&A because I suck at my job. I have asked you for questions in several other videos. You have questioned me, and I have not answered any of them. So let's do that now. Okay, so I do start to plan this out a little bit. It's not the greatest thing. It doesn't come out the best, but don't worry about that. You'll see in the end. Let's get started with some questions. So Imelda asked, whenever people start to like my work, I am then aware of what people like, and I'm no longer thinking clearly about what I like. This has happened several times in my art life. You said you wanted to know what we like to see in your art. How can you do that and still live within your own art? So that's a great question, and basically here's the thing. Not only do I care what everybody thinks, I also don't care what everybody thinks. So here's the thing. First thing I do is what I enjoy doing. Then I make a connection with people. And then because I like to do that thing, I connect with people on that thing. So if it's something that I don't like doing, just because someone likes it doesn't mean I'm going to do it. I have to like and enjoy doing it first, and then I present it to people and see how they react to it. And then you form that bond with people. They start to like it too, or they give you some information back, or they say, yeah, I like to do that kind of art too, and then they show you some of their art. But it's always a matter of keeping in mind, do you like what you're doing? If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then just scrap it. Throw it out the window. It's not even worth it. Okay, Lady Druna asked a couple of different questions here. So the first one is, would you be interested in doing a favorite art supply video? I've done that before. I have a past one, but I need to do another one because that was a couple of years ago. I need to do a newer one that shows some of the stuff that I like to do now. The second question is, are you sticking to the art you make, or do you hop styles from time to time? Always hop styles. I get bored very easily. I may do maybe 3, 4 of the same one, maybe 5 of the same type of style, and then I'm like done. I got to do something different, and I go back to one of the other styles that I like, because now what this person is saying is that they're trying to figure out their art style, and sometimes they abandon one after a while because it's not making sense to them. Now, if it's not making sense to you, if you start to do something, you don't enjoy it, just trash it completely. It's not worth doing. That's the same thing as the last answer. You got to do what you love to do. But I hop around art styles all the time. I do get bored with one thing, so I'll stop doing that. I'll do something else. And then eventually something will inspire me to go back to that type of art, and I'll just go do that, and I'll have fun doing it. But I'm always thinking about, am I going to have fun doing this? Okay, Christina Chomley questions. She said, what are your thoughts about us abstractors? And she thought that up herself. That was her own term. So she said, what are your thoughts on us abstractors practicing realistic sketches and drawing? Do you think the realistic drawing skill has any relevance or crossover to your abstract work? Absolutely. Can we reasonably have an abstract practice without developing realistic drawing skills? Yes. So here's the thing. Now, can you have an abstract practice without developing realistic drawing skills? I don't know, because I think realistic drawing skills they're represented everywhere. In every painting, drawing you ever see, unless it's that abstract thing where people are just slapping paint on the page and they're trying to tell you that, oh, this color, this is my emotion on the page, and they're just throwing stuff, which I don't like that kind of work anyway. That's not my thing. That whole John Pollock thing is not very... I don't like that kind of artwork. That's not for me. I need something to look interesting intentionally. So I start by putting something on the page that's not intentional. I don't know what it is. I just slap stuff everywhere. And then I take that and develop it into something that looks interesting to me. And that's what I do. So for me, I need the realistic drawing stuff, because if I don't have those skills, then whatever I put down isn't going to be pleasing to me. So it's just to please me. But drawing skills like developing composition and shading and form and shape, and how to create those, how to create light and things that are interesting, and how to change your contrast to make sure that your contrast is right, so that if things look more interesting, you can pull focus to one spot and not to the other spot. Those are all real drawing skills, and I think that they kind of translate perfectly for abstract art. That's what gives people the idea that, oh, this looks like something. What is it? I just keep staring at it. I don't know what it is, but I keep looking at it because it's interesting to look at. And I think those are the real drawing skills that go into it. Okay, this person is just numbers. 3534538 has asked a question. And it says, I believe some YouTubers stress themselves out because they want to earn income from videos, and or first they desperately beg their viewers to subscribe. They promise to answer every comment. But how would that work with a lot of subscribers? I have no idea, because I try to answer every comment with something. But I think you can at least acknowledge every comment. You can go on there and click the little thumbs up, or click the little heart thing, or click the thumbs down if you don't like what the person said. But you can at least acknowledge every post. You can do that even if you have thousands on there. It doesn't take long to just scroll through, clicking just something, a thumbs up, something that you're acknowledging that person. I think it's very important to acknowledge the people that are trying to support you by asking you questions, or sometimes being a troll, which is fine with me. But they're trying to do something, they're trying to interact with you. There's no problem with people interacting. You can try and do it. Yes, people get desperate at first. They beg their viewers to do things. I almost never ask you to subscribe. I do ask the thumbs up at the end of every video, but don't worry about that. I don't really expect anyone to do that. The thing is, the more you interact with a video, the more it pushes out to other people. So YouTubers do that. They say, yeah, comment here and I'll comment back. I'll do that because they want their videos to gain some traction. And the more you talk about it, the more you comment, the more you thumbs up, the more you like and subscribe, all that stuff. it just feeds the channel a little bit. It helps it get out to other people because YouTube thinks, oh, this is actually useful. Okay, we didn't think so, but here you go. People do get stressed. I don't get stressed out because I'm doing, like I said in a previous video, I'm doing this anyway. I enjoy all of you and I enjoy interacting with all of you. But if no one interacted with me, I'd still put it there because I enjoy doing it myself. Cherise asked, I've been considering a B paper watercolor sketchbook. How do you like it? Here's the thing. The watercolor sketchbook she's referring to. So the B paper watercolor sketchbook has, I enjoy it. Personally, I do. I know a lot of people don't like it and a lot of people do like it. There's like those two camps. They either love it or they hate it. I like it because it's good watercolor paper. I can do this paper that I'm using here in this video is the B watercolor sketchbook. That's what I'm using. It holds a lot of water. It holds color well. Everything's bright, vibrant, pops off the page. It's bright white. There's a lot of contrast if you wanted to do that. So I enjoy it. It's not too rough. You can get some really good ink lines on it, and it's nice, but it also has that texture too. So it's not too rough, but it does have a nice texture. When you put the paint on, you can see the texture come through, which is something else I love about watercolor paper. So I think it's a great book, but some people don't because maybe the way that they do it, it's a little bit softer. So sometimes if you put tape on it, it might tear a little bit, but I enjoy it. I have no problem with it. I absolutely love that book. I didn't think I liked it as much as I do until I found myself without one. And I kept looking for it and saying, wait, I got to grab that book. And I didn't have it because I used it up. And that was a mistake. I should have had one on the shelf, waited ready to go, a spare one. And now I do. So I enjoy the book. Okay, Melda asked another one. She said, so there was a video not that long ago where I used the quill brush. And it was a real brush instead of using the water brush. She does not like the water brushes. The water brush can actually feel like scratchy on the paper. Now, I've not noticed that. I have no idea. I guess it could if it's not wet all the way or whatever. You're dragging plastic across the paper. That's what it is. So I guess it could be a little scratchy. I don't find it scratchy, and I'm a very tactile person, so I'm surprised that I haven't picked up on that. But for me, it's just simpler to use that. Do I think that the silver brush made a difference when I used the quill? No, not really. I know other people tell me. I get comments on this continuously. People telling me that I have no idea what I'm doing because I'm using a water brush. They tell me that, especially with granulating colors, how could you use a water brush with granulating color? You got to use a real brush with that, else you'll never see it. And no, I never have a problem. I want to say this one more time. If you're not sick of hearing it, believe me, I'm sick of saying it. But I never have a problem getting granulation out of a granulating watercolor ever in my life. I understand how that works, and I get every bit of it that I want. However, some people like to tell me that, again, I'm using it wrong. Not this person, but someone else. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Anyway, it doesn't bother me. The water brush on the paper does not bother me at all. I don't find it scratchy. Definitely not dry because it's a water brush. It's always soaking wet. So it's fine. So, I mean, you can make it drier. There's a video on that too. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, but I like using real brushes. I always use real brushes when I do this. If I'm at my house, just sitting down to just do something or whatever. But whenever I'm going to record a video, the desk is kind of fragile, could get some water on it and destroy. It's just a laminate on top of, it's like a paper laminate on top of like a particle board. You get it wet, it'll bubble up and start to peel off. I don't want that. You can also spill any of the water pots that you have laying around because you're dipping in all these water pots. You have to have the one for clean water and then the one for cool colors and the one for warm colors. And it just, I'm gonna knock it over. I'm a klutz that way. I will knock over that water. I'll go to reach for something. I won't pay attention to it. I'll knock over the water on the desk. My electronics are on here, and so I don't use it as much. But all in all, I love using real brushes. I love using water brushes. I just love using brushes in general. I love painting. Art with Alexander said, watercolor made with honey, how does that mix? So from what I understand, it can be more sticky. if you look at like the M gram, which is notoriously sticky, it doesn't dry all the way in the pan. It always stays just a little bit tacky, from what I've heard from other people. I don't know. I don't have any on my shelf, but I've seen other ones. I've had some Mission Gold that have stayed tacky on the pan. And you go to, and I don't know if those are made with honey, but I'm just saying that's what the honey sucks the water into the paint. That's what honey is for. It sucks the water in so that it stays very easily re-wettable. Some people say like the Sennelier, some people say that has a glow to it because of the honey that's in it. But the M gram does too, I believe. So I don't know if there's a difference there. But all I know is it is in there. It's not they have the regular gum arabic in there too, the binder in there too. They just add like a drop of honey. It just helps to keep it moist is all it is. It keeps it wet because it sucks the moisture right out of the air. So, but if you're in a very wet climate, I'm sure that would be pretty bad. You might end up with paint running in your bag if you take it somewhere. You could end up with mold on in your palate, which I've never had, thank goodness. But you could, and that could be a terrible thing too. Janice asked a very easy question. Said there are no rules in art or there would never be new and different art, right? Yes, right. That's exactly right. You've already answered your own question. Let's move on. So Becky asked a question. She said, you sound defensive about the connection between the acoustic guitar, the one that's from my uncle, who hurt me, and she said they were bad. And I will tell you, they were all terrible people that hurt me. There was a lot of them, and I probably deserved every last little bit of it. The thing is, I do love that acoustic guitar from my uncle. It's absolutely wonderful, and I will be defensive about it because I think it's amazing. A lot of people do not like it. That's why I was defensive about it. A lot of people say, how could you use that guitar instead of using something that's more expensive or bigger or nicer? And I just say because that's the one that I love the sound of the best. That's just how that is. Uncle Noodles asked, hey look, you like drawing these little weird characters? Why don't you get together with Eugen and put together some kind of zine or something with all these weird creatures you guys create? Maybe we have to do that, Eugen. Maybe that's something we got to get together and do. I don't know. He could be onto something here. We could sell out and be a New York Times bestseller, just these weird little creatures that we draw. You never know. Gods and Heroes said, for me, my favorites... Now, this is when I was talking about... I don't really have favorites or things like that. So, this person says, for me, my favorites are attributed to comfort. So, instead of looking at something as your favorite thing, ask yourself, what is your comfort thing? Like your comfort TV show or your comfort food that you always rely on. And does that make sense? Yes, that makes perfect sense. If you look at something that makes you comfortable instead of something that's your favorite all the time and calling something out as your favorite, that's a direct discrimination against something else. That's like saying my favorite color is this. That means that the other colors you don't like. However, if you say my comfort colors are this, that's different. That doesn't mean you don't like the other colors. It just means that these are the ones you're most comfortable using. For example, I like the autumn muted palette, and that's the kind of colors that I enjoy the most. Those are my comfort colors. That is a great idea. Thank you. Friend on the Edge asks, or they say, I'd love to see you set out a swatch of colors you'd put into a small box. Any chance you might do that? Yes, and if you just saw that recent Core video a few weeks ago, I already bought like seven or eight other colors from Core that I'm trying to fit 14 in a little tin, and it's not working because I already had trouble figuring out which colors I want. Then I went and bought 7 or 8 more. Now that's even harder. So I will come up with something to show you, maybe a couple of different ways to pick a palette. That may be the next video. I don't know how to do that. We'll see. But we'll figure something out. Celerondani, I think that's how you say that. I apologize if that's completely wrong. Loved your theory about the genuine tiger's eye and the burnt one. That's from the Daniel Smith video. And when you were testing using the wet into wet technique, now you discovered how lovely they develop when you use them that way. In other words, are you going to do that again? Am I going to do another video with the Daniel Smith? Because I didn't do the wet into wet when I used the Daniel Smith, the Primatech line, and I swatched out all the colors. I didn't do a wet into wet on all those. So yes, I do plan on getting another set of those at some point in time. swatching them all out and doing the wet into wet and seeing how they separate, because I did not do that in the original video. Moonchaser Studio said, I read this wrong, and when I first read it, it says, and I, like you, I am wanting a complete palette of granulating colors. When I first read it, I read the first words as, and I like you, and I thought, oh, that's very nice, I like you too. But no, that's not what was being said here. And I, like you, I am wanting a complete palette of granulating colors. I guess it is a new thing, so I do love granulating colors, absolutely love them. But I have always loved that. When I first discovered them was when I first got my first set of Daniel Smith Primatech, just the essential set of the Primatechs. It was like 6 colors, and I used them, and it blew my mind. I absolutely loved them. Up until that point, I had never used watercolor, really. I never went into that. So once I did that, there's no turning back now. When you take the Pymentite Genuine and you put it across a page and you see how it separates and all the granulation and different color, it's just absolutely beautiful, and I love those colors. And so I've always wanted just a full granulating set, and I think I can do that now because some of those core are granulating. Like there's a granulating red and a granulating yellow, and there's things that now I can get that maybe were lacking in the other lines. So I think I'm going to still do that. I don't know when, but that's a plan. Okay, so this episode was brought to you by these fine people, and if you have any problem with any of the answers that I have given you, you make sure you let them know, because they're the ones who support what I'm doing. So that's what you want to do. And thumb up the video if you're going to start asking some questions. I promise you, what I'm going to do is, every time I'm finding, I'm going to answer them now, don't worry. Every time I'm finding the questions that are coming, I'm going to start clipping them out, and I'm going to start just answering them in video. I'll answer them down below as well. I'm going to make sure I answer you, but I'm going to also clip out some interesting ones, put them in a video, and we'll talk about it. All right. If you would like to join our community, go to illustrationsbypete.com. You can come in, you can put your own artwork on the site and promote it. You can find some inspiration in the free reference photos. You can just use them however you want in your artwork. You do not need to credit me. Or you can come into the forums and talk to some people and maybe give some advice and maybe find a little bit of information that helps you. So come check us out. All right, that's about it for me. I'm going to go. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.